It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Oh, it's Emil Amok to you, and I don't even have my meditative music on yet. Oh, here, there it is. Do you hear it? Ah, Emil Amok's Takeout Live, number 154. This is the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAX and the ALL. What's that? Asian American Pacific Islander, Asian American AAX, Filipino, AAF, AAL, ALL, all for all. Yeah, it's for everybody. Yeah, welcome. Come in here. What are you doing? Staying outside on the fringe. Come on in. Welcome, everyone. This is my meditative talk show, my news meditation. We're here to consider the news of the day. Oh, wow. We started the week. It seemed really bad. We had the Pandora papers. If you haven't dug into the Pandora papers yet, well, you should get the courage to go through the Pandora. And we'll talk about that briefly today. I've been kind of avoiding it because I said, Pandora papers, what? I'm a Spotify fan. No, not that kind of thing. We're also going to talk about, a week that began with Facebook's meltdown, which some people think, oh, maybe they set it up to make us feel like, oh, we can't pick on Facebook. We can't kick a social media platform when it's down. We ought to hoist it up. No, got to talk about that. But the big news of the day, after such a crazy week, you wake up on Friday thinking, oh, you're going to get the labor notices. Who's working, who's not working, the jobs numbers. No, we get the special news about Maria Ressa. Maria Ressa. Who's Maria Ressa? You're asking, I'm standing next to a brown gong in my closet, and you're asking me who Maria Ressa is? Maria Ressa is a proud Asian American Filipina dual citizen of the U.S. and the Philippines, a proud recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Did you hear about that today? You got to just it's like, that was big news. I mean, it was such big news. I said, I'm going to write ahead of time my column for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, which I usually do on Monday or so. But this is big, incredible news. I mean, an Asian American Filipino journalist, Maria Ressa, winning the Nobel Peace Prize. People fighting climate change, they win the Nobel Peace Prize. People fighting cancer, finding the cure of for cancer, the common cold. God, they even gave the Nobel Peace Prize to Barack Obama. And what did he do? Become the chief deporter or the deporter in chief? I mean, look, here's the thing. Maria Ressa, hearty congratulations are in order. Ressa is the former CNN reporter turned media entrepreneur and now CEO of the website Rappler, based in the Philippines. Rappler, one of my favorite sites. If you want to know about the Philippines, look, and I say this as a columnist for the Inquirer.net, which is the website of the Philippine newspaper, and they do a diaspora thing for Filipinos worldwide because there are millions of Filipinos who leave the Philippines and go everywhere in the world to work because they can't get jobs in the Philippines. That's just one of the sad situations about that country. So if you want to know about the Philippines, you read Rappler. And that's where Maria Ressa has made her name. She's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. I didn't say Pulitzer. I didn't say the Plaridel Award from the Philippine American Press Club. No. I didn't say the AAJA award, like the Asian American Journalist Award. No. Those awards are for regular journalists. A Nobel Peace Prize is for extraordinary people, as I said, like presidents and scientists looking to make the world a better place for all. I mean, journalists cover those people who win those awards. Journalists aren't normally the actors in these high stakes dramas that concern curing the world's ills. That is, unless the world is a place where truth and freedom, the essential components of democracy, are threatened and diminished. A world where journalists are assassinated, like they are far too many times in the Philippines. A world where facts are debated with alternative facts, where authoritarians seek to silence truth tellers by branding them as fake news. Unfortunately, we live in that kind of world. And that's what makes a journalist more than just a mere scribe or a witness. Journalists are now elevated. We're actors in the public arena on behalf of the people. Providing truthful information an audience must have to exist in a free and open democracy. That's why Maria Ressa is worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize. And that's why being called a journalist today in this world is one of the highest honors. I mean, look, for years, Ressa and her Rappler staff have been dogged. They've been dogged. I like that word. Get the GG, dogged, in exposing the government of President Rodrigo Duterte, whom, if you recall, ex-President Trump called him President Duarte. Remember that? That's how, But Ressa has been dogging Duterte and his policy of extrajudicial killings of Filipinos. It's Duterte's get-tough war on drugs that's made the country a cesspool of human rights violations. And that brought on media attention, and that triggered the Philippine government's harassment of Rappler. And then in 2020, the government finally convicted Ressa and a colleague of cyber libel, which sounds like, what kind of ridiculous charge is this? But she could face 6 years in prison. Now, she's appealed. She got a call today from the Nobel Committee. And you can read in my column. She said, "I'm speechless. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. I'm speechless." Which is, this is the kind of, I don't know if she applied or if she was nominated by somebody or if you have anything to do in the nomination. But I like those awards where you don't do anything and someone says, "Hey, you've just won a Nobel Peace Prize, a MacArthur Genius Grant." We talked about that the other day. The Pulitzers, you have to do a big, you got to compose practically a science fair art piece that presents your work. I mean, it really has become kind of something you got to bring the pros in to say, okay, we're going to market this piece that we're so proud of, this news organization and our reporters. So I believe the authenticity of Ressa's comment. "I'm speechless," when the Nobel Committee called. She beat out 329 other nominees, and she shares the award with another journalist, Dmitry Muratov, who's done in Russia what Ressa has been doing in the Philippines, which is engage in the courageous fight for truth and freedom in the face of Putin's strongman government that would prefer the public stays in the dark. So here's the point. In honoring two journalists, the Nobel also serves itself and suddenly becomes like a 21st century, it becomes 21st century relevant. They've given journalists this prize. It's so different from, like I said, usually presidents win these awards. But being president comes with power, expectations, and sadly, contradiction. So I mentioned earlier, Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009. After less than 8 months on the job, and what had he done? I mean, it sounds like the Nobel Committee in Norway was just starstruck by the fact that Obama came on the scene and went to Europe and just had these huge rallies. I mean, I wonder if they would regret giving the prize to someone who eventually would become known to many, many people as the deporter in chief. I mean, he deported so many people. Oh, yeah, he gave us DACA as an executive order. And now look at where we are with DACA. Did he get immigration reform through? Didn't manage that. He did also keep Guantanamo open. That's not so great. Did Obamacare, which is the signature thing that you remember from Barack Obama, did maybe that extended to the Norwegians on the committee? I don't know. But the international diplomacy that he promised, I mean, because that's why the Nobel Committee gave him the prize. They said, oh, international diplomacy, he's gonna change the world. Well, can anyone recall a diplomatic win during the Obama years that's worthy of a Nobel? Yeah, okay, captured bin Laden, okay. Did that bring about world peace? We know it expanded the war effort in Afghanistan, and Obama did popularize the use of drones. Is that Nobel worthy? So giving it to politicians, it's kind of tricky because politicians, not journalists, really control the truth. I mean, just look at 45, the aforementioned Trump. Politicians tend to hide and obscure facts. And that last guy, Trump, lied or misled the public 30,573 times in 4 years in office, according to the Washington Post. Which is why you need journalism. And journalists like Ressa and Muratov, awarding them the Nobel, make sure that the act of revealing real facts is still considered a virtue. It reestablishes a sense of value and worth in the job that assures free societies. The award tells the world that the prize, which normally comes with a $1 million cash award, is being used to jumpstart an angel fund, what is essentially a de facto global pro-democracy movement. And I've been saying this all along. That's what the world needs right now. You think about all the things that happened in maybe you don't remember what happened in 1989. The Berlin Wall came down. Everyone's thinking, hey, this is the wave of democracy that's sweeping the world. Well, here we are in 2021. We had a paper shut down in Hong Kong, the loudest voice in Hong Kong to stand up to to China. And with that paper going down, there went the whole notion of one country, two systems. There went the pro-democracy movement, or the face of the pro-democracy movement in China. So this is a big deal. By giving the Nobel Peace Prize, not, it's not some puny award. It's the Big Daddy award that they give out. They gave it to 2 journalists. And there's a reason. Because when these common journalists choose to do extraordinary things, like face down power by uncovering facts of corruption, deceit, and malfeasance, that's worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize. For Ressa and Muratov, and for journalists all over who labor to expose and analyze truth and inform the world. Here's a quote. Actually, let me play this soundbite from Ressa. This right after she won, she got on YouTube, Facebook Live with Rappler staff, and began talking about how she's been saying this since 2016.
Since 2016, that we are fighting for facts. And when we live in a world where facts are debatable, when the world's largest distributor of news prioritizes the spread of lies laced with anger and hate and spreads it faster and further than facts, then journalism becomes activism. And that's the transformation that we've gone through in Rappler, that we were on quicksand trying to figure out, how do we do what we do? How can journalists continue the mission of journalism? Why is it so difficult to continue telling the community, telling the world what the facts are, right? So in a battle for facts, I guess what this just shows is that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee realized that a world without facts means a world without truth and trust.
And you know, that's the thing. A world without truth and trust. And without those, what do you got? You don't have a free society, and you don't have much of a shot at world peace. So when journalists are out there risking their lives, I mean, that's worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize, because the outcome of their work is the raw material that creates peace, that creates the way that people can come together, can avoid the divides and come together in peace. I like what she said, though. When we live in a world where facts are debatable, when the world's largest distributor of news prioritizes the spread of lies laced with anger and hate and spreads it faster and further than facts, then journalism becomes activism, and that's the transformation that we've gone through in Rappler. I mean, she's talking about the largest distributor. She's talking about social media, specifically Facebook. But she's talking about how the act of journalism, seeking the truth, is really activism. And it's transformational, because you're not just being a scribe. You're not just telling what the press secretary wants you to say. It means having a point of view from almost an absolute truth perspective. Meaning, okay, we know what's in the press release. Is that the truth? Or do you have to ask more questions, or go somewhere else and go around the gatekeeper to where the facts are? And that means journalists must dig deeper than accepting that press release and add to that truth to bring out something closer to the truth that provides a context that helps people live in a democratic society. But you know, she also took a swipe at Facebook, and she mentioned the whistleblower and her testimony in Washington in her comments today. She mentioned the whistleblower earlier, and she mentioned Facebook's meltdown. She said she has no love for algorithms that have changed media and society. She said, quote, "These algorithms divide us and radicalize us." Because they're coming at you all the time, right? And, you know, it's making us kind of monkey mind crazy, right? Thinking fast, she says, quote, "Thinking fast is the emotional part of you that's being manipulated by the algorithms. So think slow, not fast. And let your thinking mind come through." Solid advice for news consumers who are inundated by a barrage of siloed media. So you might have comfort to know that, oh, well, I'm getting my news just from these guys or just from these folks. And when in fact, we don't need silos of media, we need to chop the silos down from vertical to horizontal to make sure we are as informed as we possibly can be. So, Ressa, and if you go to my ALDEF column, I provide the link, aaldef.org/blog. But there was another thing she said in her YouTube comments today. She said she likes the phrase "hold the line." It's like drawing a line in the sand. I think we all have to do it as either news purveyors or news consumers. Here's the line, she says, on this side you're good, on this side you're evil. And we at Rappler decided we're going to hold that line on the good. And it means if she's taking a stand against the Philippine government because of its malfeasance, no wonder then the Philippine government has filed 10 arrest warrants against her. She says it was, quote, "pretty bleak at times, but I really continue to believe that we need to continue shining the light and doing accountability journalism," which is what it is. It's a search for the truth, but in the end, it's accountability journalism. So it couldn't have come at a better time. This is October. It's Filipino American History Month. And on October 8th, she gets notified that Maria Ressa, 58, the first Asian American Filipino and only the 18th woman to be Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 126 years of this award. That's something. She'll say, "I'm not that young," but she's Filipino, so she looks young. And actually she is. At 58, she's still in fighting shape. You look at the politicians, they're not giving up. That's a long tail career. Trump is thinking of running again. Biden's in his late 70s. 58's young for Maria Ressa. But she's typical of a lot of Filipinos, the majority of Filipinos here in the United States right now, who were born in the Philippines, then immigrated to the U.S. She's kind of like a 1.5. If the immigrant is the one, right, the people who come here as young kids and grew up here, they're kind of 1.5s. My father came in the 20s. He's 1. I'm 2, right? The Asian American, Filipino American son of the immigrant. I'm the full 2. She's the 1.5. So when we talk about us all straddling between America and the Philippines, well, as a born here, like myself, I didn't go back to the Philippines very often. my life is here. Even though my relatives were in the Philippines, they came here ultimately when immigration laws were loosened up. Post 65, post 80, they were able to come here, even though there's still a backlog. But you look at Ressa, she did the perfect 1.5 life. She came here as a young child. She studied hard, got into Princeton, was a Fulbright scholar, then hired at CNN, which sent her back to the Philippines to report. And she's covered every Filipino administration since 1986. She's a dual U.S. and Philippine citizen. And in that way, she's a global citizen, right? I mean, I, as a full 2.0, am the American-born Filipino. I injected myself into Filipino-American politics, or Philippine politics in America, because what was that in the 80s? But Marcos, the dictator, and America's support of Marcos from Reagan to Bush. And so that's how I became an American Filipino, and how I went back to the Philippines in the 80s. I went back in 83 to cover the assassination of Benigno Aquino, who was in exile. He was the opponent to Marcos. And Aquino was the hope for freedom, for democracy, to end martial law. He went back in 1983, was shot in August of 1983, assassinated. And I went back to cover the funeral. And continued covering the Marcos story until 87, when Marcos was ousted. I was gone. I was off the beat. Still covered it for the ethnic news. But that's where things got interesting in the Philippines for Maria when she was working for CNN, because people power was a big deal. What Cory Aquino would do, the widow of Senator Aquino, what she would do as the leader of people power, that was a big deal. And then since 1987, Marcos gone, the Philippines has been kind of off the radar. As well, they're kind of a democracy that's in America's image and kind of fledgling. They always seem fledgling, but in fact, it's just the Philippines doing democracy their way. And that's the way it should be in many ways. But now here we come, 2021. The prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, goes to Ressa at a time when the journalists in the Philippines can really use a boost, because the Philippine elections are coming up. The authoritarian Duterte has announced his retirement, can't run again. But the son of Marcos, Bongbong, has just announced his desire to run. What, with the legacy of dictatorship? The rise, the second coming of Marcos? And then there's the boxer Manny Pacquiao, who wants to put in his bid as well. Even though the party he's running, the party he's a part of, Duterte's party, a faction may support one of Duterte's henchmen, if not Duterte's daughter. And then there's Lenny Robredo, a woman who's also in the fight. And I think you can see it's going to be a difficult election cycle in the Philippines. You think democracy has had a tough time in the U.S. with its elections since the Trump era? Ressa says in that YouTube interview that she gave to her own company, Rappler. She notes that Cambridge Analytica, the data mischief makers, which came out in the Mueller investigation as Russia's meddling in our elections and elections worldwide. Well, they practice their trade in countries like the Philippines. So it almost assures us that for democracy to survive, it's going to require the hard work of accountability journalists like those at Maria Ressa's Rappler. But with this Nobel Peace Prize, I think it's going to go a long way. Let's hope to shore them up. Not just them, but also it'll shore up Dmitry Muratov in Russia. It'll shore up every journalist out there who's trying to seek the truth. And I include people like myself who, because of cost, dwell in opinion, but with a journalistic sense. I mean, I've won awards in journalism for my straight journalism, and there's a place for opinion in journalism, clearly labeled. It's been somehow, that notion has been bastardized with cable talk and Limbaugh talk and, talk radio. That, the rhetoric from those media. But I've always said, from my days on television, on NBC affiliates and around the country in Washington, D.C., and also at NPR, that, well, I've always said that the important work I've done has been the work in the ethnic media as a columnist in papers like the Philippine News, Inquirer.net, places like Asian Week, places like the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, which has been the home of my Emil column since 2010. Because here we can talk about us like we count. Because we can't find us in the mainstream media most times. Nor can we find analysis of things about what we're doing or what's happening to us. Unless there's something catastrophic. Oh, six Asian Americans killed in Atlanta. 6 out of 8. Spa massacre. Oh, the president saying China virus. More than 9,000 Asian Americans experiencing hate instances, from as mild as verbal transgressions to something major as physical harm and death. Who puts the news in perspective from or with our lens, with our Asian American Filipino lens? That's why I do this. And that's why I honor Maria Ressa, because she proves that it doesn't matter where you do it. It doesn't matter where you seek the truth. A place like the Philippines or a place like my closet. If it's journalistic, getting out the truth, it's important in a free society. It's also one of the virtues of Facebook and the internet, because while the internet has created this algorithmic world, this algorithmic media world that divides. It has also given people like myself, responsible journalists, a way to reach people. It's also given Ressa a way to reach people on her Rappler site. So it's up to the audience to know who's drawn the line between good and evil, and the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize to a journalist like Ressa shows there are responsible journalists practicing and who will serve you in your effort to maintain and preserve a free and open society. So congratulations again to Maria Ressa. aaldef.org/blog. You can read my column and see what else I have to say on some other things. Throughout the week, I wrote about a number of things, but check that out. In the time remaining here, yesterday's show was interesting. We had Dan Gonzalez talk about Filipino-American history. Yeah, when I was talking about Maria Ressa's background, that is Filipino-American history of the 21st century. The influx of Filipino-Americans who are 1.5ers, who are doing their best to broaden the world. I mean, the real 1.5ers, they've managed to both to essentially straddle the Pacific. So Maria Ressa studied at Princeton, grew up in New Jersey, now doing the worker for life in the Philippines. And of course, now people everywhere will be following the appeal of that libel, the internet libel or cyber libel charge that the Philippine government has against her. Could mean 6 years. George Clooney's wife, Emil Clooney, is her lawyer. Just reading the reports. But it's an important day for Filipino Americans, and it happened in October. So happy Filipino American Heritage Month. Oh, I said heritage. It's Filipino American History Month. And this is not just Filipino American, it's world history, right? The Nobel effing Peace Prize. Not the Pulitzer. Not the SPJ, no, not the RTNDA award, not the AAJ award, not the Nobel Peace Prize. Oh my God. That's just, you have to just kind of understand the significance of that. That there is no other prize above that. I mean, if you're looking for prizes, I can't think of one. Is there a better prize than the Nobel Peace Prize? Not Nobel Prize for chemistry, the Nobel Prize for economics, the Nobel Prize for literature. Oh, I've got a favorite for the Nobel Prize for literature. Crossing my fingers, I won't mention them now because I don't want to jinx it. But really, the Nobel effing Peace Prize. Congratulations, Maria. All right, a couple of quick things before we leave. I was mentioning Daniel Phil Gonzalez, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez on Emil Amok Show 153 yesterday. Catch it on YouTube or on my at Emil Amok Twitter feed. You can watch it. The Twitter viewer is a little, I mean, you got to understand, they play around with it. And I know younger people get it, but old guys like me are like, oh, how does this work? I figured it out. It's actually not bad to view it on Twitter. But again, they're not figuring you're going to go through an hour worth of video. However, you could, or if you want to see a whole lot, go to the Emil Guillermo YouTube channel. I just have a couple other things to say because, I didn't want to make this all about Maria Ressa. I wanted to also mention some the Pandora Papers, and I don't want to give short shrift to the Pandora Papers, but if you've been scared to get into the Pandora Papers because you think, oh, what is this about? What this is about? And when I was a kid, I used to drive my car. I had a Mustang. High school kid. Must have been poor. Now I was, but in high school I had a paper route, I had jobs, and I bought like an old Mustang. I think it's a 65 Mustang. And it was cool. Had a hump in the back though. Anyway, one of my jobs was being a courier for a law firm. And the law firm, these boxes were all tax files. I was working for a tax attorney. And this guy was sheltering money for rich people in the Cayman Islands. I knew nothing about the Cayman Islands back then in the 70s. But now I've come to know all about the Cayman Islands, not as a person who needs these tax services, but as a person who follows the news and knows that when you mention the Cayman Islands, you're talking about money laundering. You're talking about where to hide your money under the most favorable laws so that you don't have to pay taxes to anybody. You can make your money and say legal or illegal. Actually, the more illegal, the better, because you can just stash your money away and not have to tell anyone how much is there and don't pay taxes on anything. The Pandora Papers was an effort by investigative journalists from around the world, the Washington Post and others, to try to find who these people were who were stashing their money away and where they were hiding their money. And what they found was rich people, world leaders, kings, billionaires, Putin. They were all stashing their money in places not like the Cayman Islands. They were stashing it in America. And of all places, Yankton, South Dakota. And the last time I looked, the largest Asian American minority in South Dakota were Filipino Americans. Did you know that? I think I saw that in a Pew Research Center study. South Dakota, which made laws that said, hey, you rich people, you want a break, come bring your dollars to South Dakota. You wonder why all your credit card come-ons have you mail things back to South Dakota? It's because of that. And everybody does it, or every big corporation does it, but doesn't mean it's right. I mean, everyone centers their financial businesses there. A lot of people do because of those favored laws, but especially those with money who then say, hey, if I've got these dollars, I can put them through legally here and no one will have to know where these dollars came from. Anyway, that's the Pandora Papers. These documents, and a huge number of documents, something like, let's see, what is the number? 11.9 million documents that reveal the holdings of people like the King of Jordan and a woman who was allegedly in a years-long relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And it's all in Alaska, South Dakota, Nevada, and Delaware, but they specifically talked about places like Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Yankton, South Dakota, because it was places like that where people thought, oh, well, we're legislators up here. We'll make the laws favorable for these people. And that'll mean we'll have all these jobs. Jobs will come. We won't have a cow economy, an ag economy. We'll have a white collar financial economy here. Guess what? It didn't happen. Didn't happen. Meanwhile, here's the real bottom line. If you really want to know about the Pandora Papers, and so that you are smarter before you started listening here, it's estimated by the Washington Post and other investigative reporters that the rich have stashed away $32 trillion of untaxed money. $32 trillion untaxed or at a very low tax rate. $32 trillion. This does not include real estate, art, or jewels. So add another, couple 10 trillion. $32 trillion untaxed, stashed away in these rich people havens. It's estimated to be more than the United States total gross domestic product in 2020. And more than 10 times the current U.S. budget deficit. So, what does it say? It says that the United States is a haven. All those people went to the Grand Cayman Islands to stash their money in the 70s and 80s and 90s and so forth and so on. Hey, you don't have to stash it that far to visit your money or to hide your money. You can hide it in South Dakota. And guess what? Just think, if it's 10 times the current U.S. budget deficit, we're talking about 32 trillion untaxed. What if we tax some of that money? Do you think that the arguments we're having now over social infrastructure for 3.5 trillion or 1.5 trillion, and the progressives wanted as much as 6 trillion, do you think out of 32 trillion untaxed that's being hidden in the U.S. by these foreign folks who've dumped their money in South Dakota and places like that, do you think we can get 6 trillion to make sure that old people can get all the Medicare they need, can digest their food, and get glasses that they need, like Bernie Sanders said the other day? Do you think we can do that? So, just something to think about if you haven't checked out the Pandora Papers. Once again, it's all due to investigative reporting, which is the very thing we talked about early with Maria Ressa, her investigative reporting, that really has exposed the Duterte government as human rights violators in fighting the drug war, fudging the numbers, saying, "Oh, it's just a few thousand." No, it's not a few thousand. It's like tens of thousands of people who've been caught in that drug war, many of whom are innocent. How do you get to that? Investigative reporting. And if I might add one more thing, I also host the PETA podcast, as I mentioned yesterday. I don't want to say that I did the investigative reporting, but the USA Today and the Arizona Republic did a massive investigative report based on documents that were FOIA'd, unveiled by the Freedom of Information Act, petitioned by PETA. The documents that PETA got were shared, the report was written, and the whistleblower was a former employee of this place called the Washington National Primate Research Center, and she's now a PETA senior scientist. But it just revealed waste, violations of state and federal law, dead monkeys who were involved, monkeys who were bred in a facility in Arizona where they were used for experiments, but there was a problem because of the toxic waste that contaminated the breeding facilities there. It's a massive investigative report, all based on documents that the National Institutes of Health didn't want you to see. And they didn't want you to see it so much that they forced PETA's hand to use the Freedom of Information Act. And now, in conjunction with the journalists, they've now exposed these documents. And so why should people care? People should care because the National Institutes of Health funded this primate research center to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. It's all under our noses, and we have allowed it to happen. And only because of activists working with journalists has the truth come out. Just another example of the kind of investigative journalism that we need. So it really is a day to celebrate that when Maria Ressa gets the Nobel Peace Prize for her work at Rappler in the Philippines. So there's a bunch of other things I want to talk about today, but I'm not going to be able to get to them. A quick thing. This Biden thing on January 6th, it's a big deal because he's not going to give executive privilege or use his right to stop these documents on the January 6th, thing that he's going to expose. He wants people to see exactly what the Trump administration did. Trump administration doesn't want, or the lawyers for the Trump administration, they aren't going to cooperate with the Congress. So I don't know if any of this is going to mean anything in terms of people understanding that the Trump administration was deeper into the January 6th insurrection than people think. But it's a big deal because maybe we'll get at the truth. Of course, this was revealed not by journalists, but by the actors. And when it's revealed by the actors, you have to wonder, they want to get the truth out badly. And why? Biden, because it embarrasses Trump. Trump doesn't want it out because it embarrasses him. I would have liked it better if some investigative journalists revealed it, because then we could just see, the documents. Well, we're going to get the documents. The real story is that the Biden administration isn't going to block them, isn't going to use executive privilege to say, hey, you can't see this. We need to see it. So kudos to Biden. All right, couple other things. I was going to mention David Chu, old friend of mine, Assemblyman David Chu of San Francisco. It looks like he's accepted the job as city attorney of San Francisco. He's going to be the first Asian American city attorney in San Francisco. I don't know. That's a great thing. David's a friend of mine. I haven't talked to him about this, but it may be that he just thinks he can have more of an influence on maybe he can have more of an influence on the public and public issues as city attorney rather than as an assemblyman. Maybe he got frustrated because of choices he made. And I don't know. Look, I think David Chu should have been mayor of San Francisco and not Ed Lee. And if you go through the Aldef docs, I'm sure I wrote about it there back at the time that David Chu and Ed Lee made some kind of deal. And the deal was that Ed Lee would get the mayor spot and David would butt out. So I haven't talked to David, but my guess is he wants to be mayor of San Francisco. That's my guess. David is he's from Massachusetts. And with the emergence of the Asian American in the Boston mayoral race, who has almost the same kind of credentials, Harvard College, Harvard Law. She grew up in Chicago and stayed in Boston. Mayor. She's got a shot at being mayor. Her name escapes me. I apologize for that. I'm not nimble-fingered in my closet here to get her name, but I'm sure people on the chat will correct me. I just know that David made his choice to come to San Francisco. I met him in 2000. He made his run for assembly, or actually supervisor first, and then ultimately the assembly. But also assembly has, they term out. You can term out. You need to move around in San Francisco. Well, it is San Francisco politics, but it's essentially California politics. But the fact that David Chu is heralding being the first Asian American to be city attorney of San Francisco tells me he misses the city and he wants to make a difference in City Hall. That's just my take. But congratulations to David. He's a good guy. I was going to talk about jaywalking. That was a thing that the Freedom to Walk Act, which is it's something that's awaiting the governor's signature. Let's see if it gets passed. We talked about Quinto yesterday. We didn't have time to go into the jaywalking bill. I'll bring it up next week because it's interesting. The jaywalking, the Freedom to Walk Act is interesting because you can be guilty of walking while Filipino or walking while black. It's a for real thing. We'll talk about that next week. Let me close off with two things. It's Indigenous Peoples Day today. So says Joe Biden. It's the first, it's astonishing. It's the first time a proclamation is out, declaring this day as Indigenous Peoples Day. So happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And, Columbus Day is coming up, and who celebrates that anymore? It's also my birthday weekend, and happy birthday to me. I mention it because, here I am in my closet and speaking to you, I don't know, wherever you are. And I just want to say that I consider it a great gift to see an Asian American Filipina like Maria Ressa win the Nobel Peace Prize for her journalism. It's just a reminder that wherever we are, if we seek the truth, it's an important job. It's an important role. I mean, I've been a journalist from day one. I guess you can't count the time I was a paper boy. That doesn't count, being a paper boy. Although I was delivering the news, but I was just a paper boy. But no, I was beaming with pride for her, knowing how difficult it's been the last few years, especially with that cyber libel suit. And I just know that even though I'm here talking to you directly on wherever, Facebook Live or YouTube or on Twitter, I remember one guy who read Thich Nhat Hanh. He kind of turned me on to Thich Nhat Hanh, in fact. And I was wondering why he never hired me. He was an editor. And I said, and he never hired me because he saw me do something like this at some point. And he said, Emil, do that. That's you. You were meant to do that. And never talked to him again. Why you didn't hire me? My job isn't the thing you do. Do what you do. And I mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh because Thich Nhat Hanh, the monk, and I'm in meditative mode. It's only because I've discovered my meditative practice in the last 15 months or so that I understood what he meant and what he said. And so I come to this juncture in my life, standing before my brown gong, Emil Muck's takeout, saying, I'm happy in my closet. I'm happy you're there. I thank you for being there and for listening. We'll keep doing it. I mean, this is Emil Muck, number 154. 155 coming up next week. Hopefully by then, the Giants will be a couple games up on the Dodgers. And look, I don't know what you're doing this weekend. Are you going to some super spreader event? I hope not. I'm kind of coronaphobic. And so I ordinarily would be at the game rooting on the Giants, but I'm not going to be there today, nor on Saturday. I was there 5 years ago, the week in October. The Giants played the Cubs, and it looked like they were going to have a miraculous comeback. It looked like they were going to beat the Cubs. It looked like, and then they didn't. And the Cubs celebrated and went on to win the World Series. For the Cubs, hey, good story for the Cubs. Chris Bryant was on that Cubs team. He's now with the Giants. Maybe he'll do what he did to the Giants, to the Dodgers tonight. But I know I love the Giants. I'm rooting for them. And that would be a great topper from Maria Ressa's win to a Giants victory tonight. All right, so that's it for me. Let me read what passes for credits here. This is Emil Muck's Takeout Live. Emil Muck's Takeout is a podcast that you can get wherever your podcasts are, but the live show is unique to wherever you're watching now. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Check it out, though. There's 154 of them. I repost them on amok.com. Check them out there. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday. Not 2 to 5, just like 2 to whenever the tank runs out. And, you can follow me on Twitter, at Emil Amok. Go through the feed. I know sometimes you'll be able to see the videos there. See more at amok.com. I like to say, bang the gong. Be here now. I'm not editing. We're doing this live. We're just like talking. Hey, it's emilguillermo.media, amok.com. This is what I like to say. It's the talk show of the API and the AAX and the ALL. That's all the rest of us. Thank you for being with me. And if you've lasted this long, this is the true lagniappe part. This is the part where I say, hey, look, congrats. Give yourself a hug. Pat yourself on the back. Hey, look, you're good. You're worthy. No shame. Feel no shame. You belong. Someone's got to tell it to you. I'll tell it to you. Be kind to yourself. Be nice to yourself. Be nice first, then attack. I'm Emil Guillermo. Till next time. Mahal Kita.